Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray you're all well. Okay, let's resume. Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين صراط الذين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وامنحنا يا ربنا علما وعملا وقربا يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم أكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وأرضنا وارض عنا يا كريم. So in the last few verses we've been looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us about his the signs of his power. Power, when you understand in detail, you understand that power comes necessarily with knowledge, right? Because if Allah's infinite power, then clearly he's always been characterized with it, right? And so he also has knowledge. So power and knowledge, that's also infinite. They're both closely resemble. We won't go deep into the proof, but the verses do indicate the vast power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and obviously other verses explicitly mention his knowledge. The reason why we know power and knowledge are together, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look at whatever he's created, from the amoeba, the simplest cell, to the rings of Saturn, right, or a massive star, for it to be created the way it is, he has to have had knowledge. So he's made it, and that making is based on him knowing that it's like this. When you taste a strawberry, there's that slight bitterness, and then there's a sweetness that comes with it. Why is it like that? Why are the seeds of a strawberry on the outside? It's a design. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is how we know power indicates knowledge, right? Just by looking at the breakdown of things, and you can get this through reflection. And alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, Allah grants this to people who use their minds to reflect. And then on top of that, the power indicates that he can resurrect and recreate, and therefore the judgment is true as well. And so all of this indicates that it's only him, only he can create it. Had there been multiple gods and multiple creators, then there wouldn't have been, like for example, we're all carbon-based life forms, right? So on this planet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, like this. Had there been another creator, why didn't someone else choose to do something differently? So make us based, our basic biological structures be based on something else other than carbon. So this is what we see, that it indicates that he alone has his power, so therefore he's the only God, right? And if there are other creatures, right, and that are made by another creator, why do they share the similarities to what God's creators created, down to, like for example, things like fur and feathers and eyes, and down to DNA, right? And so it's one of those things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us another manifestation of his tremendous power. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, and he's the one who sends down rain from the sky. فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ نَبَاتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, causing all kinds of plants to grow. فَأَخْرَجْنَا مِنْهُ خَضِرًا نُخْرِجُ, producing green stalks from them. نخرج منه حبا متراكبا ومن النخل من طلعها قنوان دانية, and from palm trees some clusters of dates hanging within reach. Okay, so once again, وَهُوَ الَّذِي, and he is, so all alone it's him. It's just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's creating this. No one else deserves worship. No one else is a divine being. No one else is the perfect creator, just Allah. So he is the one who sent down from the sky ma'an, much, plenteous rain. What does it mean from the sky? In the Arabic language, sama, so all of these things are manifestations, or like I said, of his power and his mercy. Because, like, imagine, no rain, right? Imagine living in a desert or in a place where there's just no water. What an incredibly difficult life that would be, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses people, and some more than others in some things. And like you'll find that for example, in the Middle East, there's not as much rain like that we get here, say for example in the West. But then there's blessings that the Middle East has. Prophets walked there, many prophets walked there. The lands are blessed in a way these lands aren't. So there's good everywhere, but it's just distributed, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with this. So he says he sends down water from the sky. The sky in Arabic, literally, it doesn't literally just refer to the blue thing above us. Rather, it refers to, you can use the word sky to mean anything above you. So the ceiling in this room, if I refer to it as, نظرت إلى السماء, I looked up at the sky, and I meant the ceiling, it would be fine. It's valid in the Arabic language. So from above you, because we know it comes down from rain. And then أفرأيتم الماء الذي تشربون أأنتم أنزلتموه من المزن أم نحن المنزلون. Have you even stopped to reflect on the water that you drink? Do you send it down from the clouds, or is it we who send it down? So we know, there's a whole scientific process about, process that science has identified, where, the water is in the clouds and it gets really cold, and then anyway, condensation, and that's how we get the rain. So one huge aspect of his mercy that benefits many people in many ways. So then he says, and he, remember at the beginning, and he is the one who sent it down, right? Because that points to his divinity, that Allah's power. And now Allah wants to show the vast favors that he does for us. And it's a majestic thing, just like the previous one, but this one Allah draws our focus on it, because the rain coming down is one thing, but the effect of the rain is manifold. There's many manifestations of it. So he says فَأَخْرَجْنَا, so we, the royal we, with his supreme authority and power, because all of this is a supreme manifestation of his power. فَأَخْرَجْنَا بِهِ نَبَاتَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and we bring out, meaning out of the ground from it, the growth or the plants of all kinds, every type of plantation. So the ulama actually are talking about here, they talk about the growth of all sorts of seeds and everything else, date stones and pits, and leading to the growth of all forms of vegetation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we do this. So you can look one type of water, but look how it affects all of this vegetation. Some grow into trees, some grow into blades of grass. So, there's moss that grows, there's, mushrooms, and many different types of vegetation, all being caused by one thing, right? What is it in water, right? What is it in water that these plants require? Why do they require it? If it was just all of a sudden it just evolved out of something, then why? Then obviously it's like when you make something, you design it. It's just as simple as that. If you're going to make a sandwich, you're going to think what I'm going to put inside it, right? You don't just put the two pieces of bread together and then all of a sudden cheese appears inside. No, because when you make it, you have an end goal in mind. So evolution must have that, right? If this is the case. So then what happens is, how do these unthinking, inanimate processes, let's say, right? It's like Karl Marx when he talks about market forces, being the cause of, the movers in society. Like there's something animal. I remember reading this, the Communist Manifesto in university, and I just sat there thinking, this is just stupid. Literally, it's thick. How can an intelligent person think that market forces okay, if you're talking in a metaphorical sense, yes, generally, but some people take it literally, right? Market forces do this. And what is market forces is, even if you take it metaphorically, it's going to be, people's wills, and people, one group deciding this and another group deciding that. Anyway, let's go back to the verse, right? And so this is the matter, that these inanimate objects, how do they know what water is and what qualities water has? right? Most people just pick up a date and chew it and eat it. And do they know of all the the chemical breakdown of what composes a date, all the sodium and all the potassium and how much sugar there is, and all of this, it's just, to say it's not a design is just not, is to not use your intellect. Honestly, I'm just sorry, but anyway, let's just say that. Right. So then he says, for akhna, once again. So he says, so we bring out the plants of all things, the growth of all plants. And then again, for akhrajna minhu khadiran, and then from there, from the ground, we bring out vegetation, green vegetation, right? So some of the ulama here said that this is referring to vegetation which is known as nujum, like although the word is also used for stars, but it's used to refer to plants that don't have like trunks or stalks or whatever. So just like a bush or something growing without a trunk. But in any case, anything that's green, khadir, any sort of vegetation. And then, why is it that the chlorophyll has that color? And why is it that chlorophyll interacts with sunlight in that particular way? And why is it that, plants take in the, what is it, the carbon dioxide, and then expel, convert that into oxygen? And how convenient that is for us. Right, there's a design, and then نخرج به حبا متراكبا, and then from this he said we produce grain, clustered grain is translated as, but grain that's piled on top of itself, such as wheat. You have the husk which contains the actual grain inside, but it's all piled up. It's not easy for, say, a bird to come and just pick off one. They'd have to rip the whole thing out. It's difficult, right? And like Imam al-Bukhari mentions. But in any case, grains that are piled up, and you look at it, there's a beauty, there's an order to this, right? And that's one of the signs of the mercy, the kindness, and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and His knowledge. That natural beauty is just amazing. Right, like honestly, people that go and you may not see everything being symmetrical in it, but there's an unsurpassed beauty, and anyone that goes out to look at nature admits this, right? Whether anyone someone wants to admit it or not, it's a reality which many human beings have attested to throughout history, right? So, and then he says, وَمِنَ النَّخْلِ مِنْ طَلِعِهَا, and then from the palm trees, from its طَلع. So طَلع is, it's the early stage of the dates. So there's a number of stages. First they're green, and then whatever, and then they get to a stage where they're yellow, and then they start to soften and go brown before they become hard and brown, like what the dates that people know. And so from these dates, this earlier dates, it's really sweet and really nice, and they have different benefits when eaten at different stages. And then from the palm trees come clusters of dates. من طلعها قنوان. So قنوان, plural of قنو, which is, it's the equivalent of a bunch of bananas. So, side point, in Arabic, banan means fingers, right? And so what do they call bananas? Actually, it's called mows in Arabic. But they used to refer to it as bananatul mows, because if you look at it in a bunch, it looks like a hand, or like an upside down hand, right? So the fingers of bananas, literally. So then the word was taken from there, banana, right? Banana means an individual finger, right? So come clusters of dates which are in qinu. So it's like a branch coming off the palm tree, and then around it in many layers is a whole cluster of dates, and people just pick them off from there. And because the branch is soft, not like a tough branch of, say, an oak tree or whatever, the branch is soft, and the weight of these things pulls it down, so it's close, it's within reach, it's easy. And qinwanun daniyatu, right? Daniya, that it's come close, it's hanging down, it's come close. It's a blessing that you don't have to climb up and you can easily pick it off. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَجَنَّاتٍ مِنْ أَعْنَابٍ وَزَيْتُونٍ, and groves, lush gardens of grapevines, وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَالرُّمَّانِ, and olives and pomegranates, مُتَشَابِهًا وَغَيْرَ مُتَشَابِهٍ, similar in shape but dissimilar in taste. You can read that in another way. انظروا إلى ثمره إذا أثمر وينعه إن في ذلكم لآيات لقوم يؤمنون. So it says, look at its fruit. Look at the fruit as it yields and as it ripens. Indeed, in these are signs. In these are signs for people who believe. So Jannatin, a Jannah is, as I said before, it means something is connected to the word Jim, Noon, something that's hidden. The root is always connected to something that's hidden. So in paradise, for example, as I said, the trees, the canopy of the trees hides the ground below. So here you cannot, this really works well with the word A'nab, plural of Inab, grapes. Now, like for example, in the Middle East, where grapes grow in the hot countries, even around the Mediterranean, what a lot of people do is over their gardens they'll put a wire mesh, and then they'll put grapevines. And a lot of it, the time, is just for decoration, right? And you walk past someone's garden and you look in up, and especially like in the heat of summer, wow, right? It's just, you look and this it's like the ceiling of the garden, because of the mesh, is covered, and it's dark green, obviously because of the grapevines and their leaves and whatever, and then it's just grapes hanging, and it's beautiful. Almost makes you want to jump up and grab them. It looks beautiful. Was zaytun, and olives, were rumman. And there's discussion, research this yourself, look into it, look into these things, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, prior to this, he starts by mentioning grains, because grains are where people get nourishment from. There's a day, like if you were starving, you probably have some bread as opposed to some fruit, because fruit's digested in a different way, quicker. It doesn't satiate you in the way, say, bread does, right, which comes from grains. So grains, and then he mentions dates after, because date trees, they were a major source of sustenance for the Arabs. They ate it like for sustenance, but it's also a type of fruit. So you get the best of both worlds. And then he mentioned grapes, because it's purely a fruit and there's a lot of benefit to it and a lot of uses. People make drinks. Okay, some can be haram, but you can make halal drinks from them. You can make a number of other things. Molasses, for example, they make molasses from it. Raisins, right, and many other things. So even all its stages, it's of benefit. Vinegar, these sorts of things. And then olives, which are delicious themselves, and then the oil that they produce has many, many, many benefits. In the past, they'd use that as moisturizer, for example, and the health benefits, the cooking benefits, and so all of you could talk about the types of molecule and the monounsaturated fat that's in olive oil. If you heat it slowly, gradually, it has a decent boiling point and a smoking point. So you can cook a lot of things in it. It's very good. Rumman, and pomegranates are just beautiful to look at as they are, and when you open them up, and funnily enough, they look like little hearts, right? And they're actually very good for your heart, right? A lot of the times, medicines from other cultures, which actually focused on healing, not just managing illness, but healing it, right? They would find, like they say, kidney beans are good for kidneys, right? Allah just made things this way. Mutashabihan wa ghayra mutashabih. The individual dates and the grapes and everything, they can resemble each other and they can be vastly different as well. It shows Allah's power. He's not just forced to create things in one way. He can create many things in many different ways. So those that resemble each other and those that do not resemble each other at all, right? And as is excuse me, as mentioned in the translation here, that the different types of fruits don't resemble each other. So even that is a tremendous sign of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he says, "Unzuru ila thamarihi idha asmara wa yan'i." Look at its fruit when it yields, when the fruit starts coming out in all of these things, how different it is to the end when it actually ripens. The growth, the taste. You know, there's a reason why people use the expression sour grapes, because grapes in the very earliest stage are not sweet, they're very sour, and then they sweeten over time. And just something that just comes from a seed. It comes from a seed, you put it in the ground, this water from the sky comes, and you know the fruit that grows on it. Such as say, why a strawberry is sweet? Where does the sugar content come from? Has anyone thought about that? Is it all there in the individual seed? If so, when you chew the seed, why can't you taste it? Right? Or does Allah create it? You could find a chemical process, fair enough, but who's made it like that? Why does it occur that way? Or does it just pull the fructose from the ground and make the strawberry sweet? You know, there's a whole thing. So look at it, when it's like this, and look at it when it's ripe. Reflect on these things, right? I think that's the best thing about verses like this. I don't think I should go into much detail, because otherwise it just becomes a fact listing thing, and it's not necessarily about the facts. Knowing facts helps, but stop and reflect on these things, right? And like the blessing of an orange, it's just it's protected. You take the peel off, and it's perfect for sharing. Take a piece off, give it to people. Anyway, and then he says, "Inna fi dhalik," indeed in that lofty matter, the rain coming down, how it affects all of these things. Inna fi dhalika, in that lofty matter, la ayatin, are many, 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 many signs, tremendous signs of the power and knowledge and mercy and kindness and oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But who benefits? لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ, for a capable group of people who actually stop and think and reflect, who believe. Their iman is strengthened by this, right? They stop and they think and they look at the matter, and their iman grows, right, with reflecting on these matters. So it's it's something that we should all try to do, right? And then after saying all of this, it's like saying Allah does all of this for you, and then these people go and worship someone else, right? So let's look at the verse. He says, وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ شُرَكَاءَ الْجِنِّ وَخَلَقَهُمْ وخرقوا له بنين وبنات بغير علم سبحانه وتعالى عما يصفون. So he says, and they associate the jinn with Allah in worship, even though He created them, and they falsely attribute to him sons and daughters out of ignorance. Glorified and exalted is He above what they claim. Okay, so this verse, let's just look at the Arabic for a second. This verse, the default structure in Arabic should be وَجَعَلُوا, they made, al-jinna, the jinn, shuraka'a, partners, lillah, for God. وَجَعَلُوا الْجِنَّ شُرَكَاءَ لِلَّهِ. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed the order, and this is very common in Arabic, but in the Quran, and it's just a source of a lot of wonder, and it's just amazing how meanings can be expressed in a tremendous way like this. وَجَعَلُوا, and then so he's saying the wow almost indicates all this is happening, like Allah is doing all these favors and blessings, and the rain's coming down, He's creating all of these, sustenance and fruit and everything for them, and they go and do this. وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ, for God, Allah. And how do they make these things partners for God? In their minds, in their beliefs, in what they say, what they claim about God. It's as though that they're claiming this to be the reality. So he's saying they're making them His partners. Lillahi, the Supreme King. This name would inspire awe in the Arabs. And this Supreme King, they're making partners. He's doing this, and they're making out of if He has partners, shuraka. And indefinite also, this is like tahqir, like partners, like Him needing partners. It's like you can't even believe it, right? And then he says al-jinn, As Imam Abdul-Qahir al-Jurjani, the Mufassirin didn't mention this. Imam Abdul-Qahir al-Jurjani, expert in rhetoric, he does mention it. And he says, the jinn is as though it's like, out of everything you could think of, the jinn, like, you're saying they're his partners. So, expressing contempt for this idea that they would even have that the jinn could be partners for God, right? No one is his partner. But if you're going to try to, you decided to pick the jinn. So there was some groups of Arabs, although it's not fitting for anyone to be a partner in God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in divinity. Some groups of Arabs just worshipped idols. Others worshipped the angels, others worshipped the jinn. And Abdullah ibn Abbas said that the jinn here refers to Iblis. So there were a group of pagans who, not necessarily from Arabia, but there were a group of pagans from the who believed that Iblis is like a core deity, A'udhu Billah, with God, and that Iblis creates the evil. You know how the Wathani, there's like the concept of yin and yang. There's some who believe that Allah creates the good, and then the devil creates the opposite. So they said that God created plants and trees and these sorts of things, and then the devil supposedly created predatory animals, this sort of stuff. No, Allah created it all for a wisdom. And so the jinn here referring to Iblis, although there are a couple of other positions, one meaning just the jinn in general, which is, if that's the case, then them obeying them and them listening to the jinn and obeying them in the way someone would obey a deity, right? And there is a position, it seems weak to me, but Abu Sa'ud and others also mentioned the position of the jinn here referring to the angels. And because they worship the angels, they said that the daughters of God. But why would they refer to the angels as the jinn? Just metaphorically, because they're also hidden from us. Jim, nun, nun, something that's hidden. So like that. He says, وَخَلَقَهُمْ, when He has created them. So you can understand this in two ways. So they're saying that they've made partners for God. For God, they've made partners the jinn, whilst in reality He's created them. So you can understand this as, whilst He has created the people who are claiming the jinn are the partners of God, so the pagans, or you can say when He's created the jinn. Right, both work. Like He's the one who created the jinn, and you're making out that they're His partners. How would that be? Or He's created you, and instead of placing your worship in the service of God, which it should be after all these blessings that He gives you, you go and worship someone else and say they're gods. So both are strong meanings. If I had to go with one, وَجَعَلُوا لِلَّهِ شُرَكَاءَ الْجِنَّ وَخَلَقَهُمْ. Probably that is them, meaning the pagans. Like He's made them into and He's created them. وَخَرَقُوا لَهُ بَنِينَ وَبَنَاتٍ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ, and they've just conjured up, you could say, and they falsely attribute. خَرَقَ, the root word is to separate something in a vast way, you could say, without knowledge, and it leads to facade. So imagine someone ripping a piece of paper. It's not straight down the middle, it won't be straight, it's just will go off all over the place, and you don't know how it's going to get ripped, right? So it's like that. So then they just made up for Him, for Allah, sons and daughters. God has, they claim that God has sons who are these idols or whatever, and the daughters, they will say, that they're the angels. Like if you see in Christianity, they'll have these images of babies, with their bottoms showing the cherubs, right? And which is, they've also do it al-muqarrabin, those angels who are close to God, it ended up as cherubs, and they fashioned them as babies, showing with their bottoms and their wings flying around, this sort of idea. So they said the angels are the daughters of God, and so the sons and daughters bighayri ilm, without any knowledge, right? Without any knowledge of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, what reverence He deserves, and how that it's impossible for Him to have sons and daughters. It's just not possible. Subhanahu wa ta'ala amma yasifun. How So subhanahu, so from the word sabaha, to go really far and just push, like you can say far and fast, to just move and go really far. So I've explained this in Surah Al-Baqarah and other places where the verb has been changed, usabbihu, to sabhan. The verb is changed to the masdar, and then the masdar verbal noun, then that's changed to a more emphatic masdar. Fu'lan, subhan. Fu'lan indicates the highest, most perfect manifestation of this thing, and then it's very strong. So it's as though he's saying Allah is as far away as possible from what they're claiming. And ta'ala, right? This is important to know because people use this, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ta'ala from tafa'ul, which the pattern normally indicates forcing something, takalluf. But here, like if you add extra force to an action, there's mubalagha, it's more emphasized, right? So here we just look at the emphasis, the emphatic element, that Allah is far, far above, not physically, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far above, far away, and far above, beyond any sort of imperfection, right? So far away and far above, transcendent, above, amma yasifun, all that they're claiming. And yasifun, so literally means describing, right? But in the Quranic context, this is used to express a lie, what they're lying about, right, about him. And then he says, how can he be so badi'us samawati wal ard, right? He's the badi'us samawati, so the he is implied, but it not being mentioned, you go straight into the point that's being made, is much stronger. Badi'us samawati wal ard, from bada, anna, he's originator of the heavens and the earth. Anna yakunu lahu walad, how on earth could he have children? وَلَمْ تَكُنْ لَهُ صَاحِبًا, when he has no mate. He created all things and has perfect knowledge of everything. So this is interesting. So he says, badi'u, so bada'a, it literally means to create something, but in a unique, amazing, indescribable way that doesn't have any sort of comparison, right? بغير مثال يحتذيه ولا قانون ينتحيه, as Abu Sa'ud said. I like the way he expressed it. But so Allah creates things uniquely. There's no plan that he's copying, and there's no previous example. Everything is unique, down to you and the closest people closest to you and the people furthest from you, right? Because look, your own fingerprints, and everything is unique. Even identical twins are not 100% identical. So it's like that. So he's the badi'us samawati, the heavens, the skies, and the earth, and everything. He's the one who's made it in a tremendous and unique form. He is the creator. Everything and everyone within it, he's made it in a unique form. And so if he's made everything, how can any of it be, how can he have children? If everything is created by him, how can they be his children? So then he says, anna yakunu lahu walad, how on earth, I explained anna not long ago, and it was like a very emphatic way of questioning, anna, how on earth could he have children, right? And وَلَمْ تَكُنْ لَهُ صَاحِبًا, when he doesn't have a companion, right, a mate. Sahiba from suhbah, someone who spends their time with another. So a mate who's always with someone. Where Allah's created everything, how can there is no mate? Allah's created everyone, He's alone, subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was no mate, right? And if He's created everything, can they really be called His sons, right? Literally, or children? And if He's created everyone, where's this mate? Because you need to have a mate or a partner to have children. Look at it, everything. Look at the way the universe works, all the examples. And, it's not some sort of self-reproductive system or whatever. Allah's saying He created everything, right? So how could there be a child? And even by your standards, where there's a mate, there is no mate, right? Find one, identify one. If they say, oh, Mary and all, A'udhu Billah, I'm saying Mary, the mother of God. No, they'll find out on the Day of Judgment. How could a finite created being give birth to an uncreated perfect being? It's just not possible. So it just shows Jesus was not God, so therefore she's not the mother of God, and we discussed this in detail in a previous surah. So it's literally this, anna yakun lahu walad. So Imam al-Zamakhshari mentions a couple of, that there's another number of ways that this verse points to, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have children, right? So one of them is that He created everything, so anything that there is created by Him, so how can it be His child, subhanahu wa ta'ala? The second is that Allah has no partner, right? And the fact that He's created everything, and everything is unique in this way. Okay, there are species within the species, people are different, but He's created everything like this, and you need to have someone of the same genus. Like if you go take the sperm of, say, a chimpanzee and try inseminating a blue whale with it or whatever, you're not going to get very far, right? Because in order to have children, you have to be of the same species or close, for example, right? And there is no one like God, so how can He have children, right? And and then it says, وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٍ. He knows absolutely everything, and He knows Himself, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He is saying that He knows that He alone is the one and unique supreme being, and so there can be no one else like this, right? It's not possible. So He knows absolutely everything, and amongst those things that it's impossible for there to be anyone who's a child of His or a partner. And all of these things point to it, as we talked about, the oneness pointing to knowledge, power pointing to knowledge, and the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is it, right? Beautiful verse, very powerful. So we'll stop here and we'll carry on from this point, inshaAllah ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.